I don't have anything witty to say for this opener, just like most Ret Paladins. This is the Ret Paladin Mage Tower. Yo fam, what up? This is Sixy. I wanted to go over my Retribution Paladin Mage Tower run with you guys today. For the challenge God Queen's Fury, this specialization is probably the easiest. There's not that many options for God Queen's Fury, and also a lot of them are classes that I'm very uncomfortable on. I've actually been attempting to play Demonology Warlock. However, after 200 attempts, I finally gave up. I don't think I had the DPS for it. With Ret Paladin, it has some tools built in to kind of make it a little bit easier. However, the DPS check is still really tight on this fight. So let's go over our talents and gear and consumables before we jump into the video. Now, for our talents, we used Zeal, Empyrean Power, Repentance, Unbreakable Spirit, Divine Purpose, Healing Hands, and Sanctified Wrath. For the most part, I think you're pretty much locked into all of these choices. There's some discussion on whether you can use Fist of Justice versus Repentance or Blinding Light. At the very end of the video, my Repentance comes in super clutch. None of these other tools would have offered me that option. So for me, Repentance is a lock-in choice. In this row, I definitely recommend Healing Hands if you need to wog yourself. It really helps out. Now for our gear, we used mostly Shadowlands gear. We were locked into specific choices. I did try farming a little bit of gear. I didn't get lucky enough to get certain drops. So I ended up needing to go to Korthia and getting a new trinket. This Harmonic Crowdbreaker is kind of a weird trinket. I don't even know. I've never seen it in anything else. This is actually from one of those Korthia accessory loot boxes that just drop you like 200 high level gear. And then we were locked into the scale as well because we didn't really have any other options. After the fact, I ended up getting a Ravage Seed Pod, which feels kind of bad, man. Now for our weapon, we needed a Crusader enchant. This Crusader enchant is imperative. It makes it so that we get enough healing in that we need to wog less, and ultimately that increases our DPS because it allows us to use our holy power on spenders. So I highly recommend getting to the Crusader enchant. At the time, I didn't know about the heirloom weapon trick. This mallet is a level 50 mallet that cost me 25,000 gold. Highly recommend you don't spend it unless you really want the transmog. I don't think it's that good looking to have spent 25,000 gold on it, but it is what it is. What you should do is upgrade a two-hand heirloom weapon to level 4 out in Ironforge, and then send that to a lower level tune, either a level 1 or a level 10. Then put the Crusader enchant and then send it back to yourself. It will automatically adjust down to the right level so that you can use the Crusader enchant. With that being said, the Crusader enchant is imperative, specifically for the healing. I completed this challenge after both nerfs to the Crusader damage, so that part was not a factor for us. All right, for our consumables. Now, when you're using a blunt object, you're going to use a shaded weight stone. This is different than almost anything else we've used in this stream. For our food, we went with the Tenebrous Crown Roast Aspic. We used a Spectral Flask of Power. We used Heavy Desolate Armor Kits. For our in-combat consumables, we used Drums of Deathly Ferocity because that was what was cheap at the time. We used Spiritual Healing Potions. We use a potion of prolonged power. I think when you're doing 3 target cleave, this ends up coming out ahead. You can probably go with potion of unbridled fury. It might make us, I don't know the DPS difference between them two. I'm not a Ret Paladin main, and this is time walking stuff. You definitely want to use like potions of strength or whatever in actual Shadowlands content. But this is what we had for our time walking content. All right, let's dive into this video. All right, this fight is very scripted. So you're going to see a lot of the same things at the same time. When you've done 200 pulls on this, there's some things that I've done to min-max my DPS. You don't necessarily have to make these exact choices. I'll try to point out those things when they happen. And some of this is adapting on the fly. My second bubble was not something I anticipated. It was something we were kind of forced into because we didn't meet a damage check. And so I was afraid I was going to get hit by some stuff. The one thing I do want to mention before I get started is that a lot of abilities overlap in this encounter. If you're using Deadly Boss mods and you do not change your base Deadly Boss mod sounds, it's a lot of the same sound overlapping, and it's not going to give you a clear idea of what you need to do. So type /DBM, go into your Legion encounters and definitely change some things up. Runeseer Fuljar will not move unless you get yourself in melee range. Now, if you kick it after you've been in melee range, sometimes they will run up, sometimes they will not. They chain cast. So you want to basically always get yourself a little bit into melee range of Runeseer Fuljar so you can keep all 3 bosses stacked up as much as possible, okay? If you do not, you will not get 3 target cleave. You'll be at 2 target cleave. It does make the encounter slightly easier. However, with that being said, you will not get the DPS in to meet the check. Okay, so we have about 5.5 minutes to get through this fight. At around the 5.5 minute mark, Runeseer Faljar will keep casting the shield over and over and over again. If you do not have the DPS to get through that shield, you will basically wipe because the cast will go off. There is a hardened rage somewhere in the 6 to 7 minute range. So we have to beat it by then regardless. All right, we're going to get Runeshear Valshar stacked on top of Jarl. Jarl will not move at the beginning. This is when you want to use your potion and your drums. This is the highest DPS uptime phase. So after this, you'll be moving around and you may not get a full like 45 seconds to just DPS. Even here, we have to use some abilities to get 45 full seconds in. The first thing that's going to get cast is this green thing on the ground. These are going to be a problem throughout the fight, as well as these axes. This is where the Crusader enchant comes in. These axes are next to impossible to dodge. You can dodge them, but what will happen is you'll only be able to move Faljar and Sigrin, and then you will not get the 3 target cleave. So you can move away from the axes, and then you don't need the healing, but then you won't have the DPS. Now, maybe if you have better trinket choices and you're able to like get some extra DPS in here, you can go ahead and dodge the axes, but this is where that Crusader chant really, really shines. Because basically here, Crusader is just the thing that's going to keep healing me over and over again so that I don't have to waste any holy power on wogs.
Oh, shit.
Run away, little girl.
So Jarl's going to cast his Berserk here for 20 seconds where he just starts beating on us. This is where I've used my first Blood Spattered Scale. I use this just to increase my uptime. And then after a few seconds, I also use my one of my personal defensives here. To just decrease the amount of damage that we're taking. So right after this, we're going to get our first set of circles.
The wrong voice.
We're going to have to run these out, run through these. We're going to get knocked back. This is another thing that he does pretty often. We're going to pick up our healing orb, even though it's useless. And then we're going to get back to Faljar so that we can continue our 3 target cleave. And then we're going to have to do another set of these, as well as the first Blood of the Father is going to come out. In between these circles, you're going to need to cast something to stop Sigrin's Blood of the Fathers. All right. I opted for Repentance here. And then I made a macro to target Sigrin in Repentance. So I just have to press T. I don't have to do anything special. And then I'm going to pick up my last circle here. And then we're going to start DPSing. And I believe this is when our first bubble on Faljar comes out. So for this first ancestral knowledge with the Ret Paladin rotation for this fight, we've been building with our builders and then spending all of our holy power on Divine Storm. Now with this first shield, I was getting more consistent results if I pressed Ardent Verdict, which is the single target damage ability. So I saved my second Wake of Ashes for this specific spot. I tried it a few times where I would try to fit a second one in and then use my third one, and then it wasn't always coming up, and then I was missing the shield timer. Everything else kind of lines up that you have other DPS cooldowns available after this. This is the only one where I consistently needed to use a single target ability in order to get through this shield. Now, this is our first set of angels. I don't know whatever this line is called, Dark Wings. So luckily we got pretty lucky with the spacing on this. It's going to get trickier and trickier because more and more things are going to overlap later in the fight. So we're really going to need to be paying attention to where those lines are, and like it's going to make some things tricky. Now I chose to stun the Jarl Velbrand's spin, so I was pretty quick to do that. This way we can keep DPSing. We're going to need to Blood of the Fathers is about to come out again, and we're going to need a Repentance here. So this is circles 3, and then circles 4 will happen right after that. So our wings were available roughly a minute ago. We're at now 1 minute and 68 seconds into we're now at 2 minutes and 48 seconds into the fight. So I've been sitting on wings for about 45 seconds. But basically when we used them, we would have immediately needed to pick up the circles. So we would have lost about 10-15 seconds of our wings running around. So I opted to hold it. Plus it lines up really, really well with this ancestral knowledge. So I've been holding my wings here. If you have better trinkets or you're better at this rotation than I am, you might not need to do this. Now, the one thing you want to keep it, another thing you want to keep in mind is that these two bosses, Runeseer Faljar and Sigrin, don't actually die. Jarl actually does die. So we can kind of gauge how much more DPS we need to do based off of Jarl's health here. All right. What happens is this Dark Wings comes out and Berserker's Rage comes out at the same time. So I was having, and then also the purple circles come out. I was having a really hard time remembering that. So I was chanting to myself to remind myself that he's about to do his enrage and we need to manage that. So the problem is that we have to do these circles at the same time that he's enraged. So what you see is I'm at the biggest circle right now. So the two circles that are the tightest he is right next to. So my choices are really, really limited here. I'm going to grab this circle and then I think I have to stun him here. I also have this slow. We have a slow thing. It's called Hammer of something. I put it on him, but we're going to have to take a whack or two from him here. Yeah, I almost missed the circle. So I actually ended up taking a lot more damage than I needed to. My goal here is always to save my Hodge for the last like 8 seconds here. Usually if I Hodge, I can get the next set of circles before he comes out of Hodge. And by the time he gets to me, the enrage has worn off. But as you can see here, I'm basically doing no DPS during this time. I get a little bit unlucky again and wind up running right next to him for this last bit of his thing. And then I go with Bop here because I wasn't sure I was going to make it back in time. So then we have Blood of the Father again, and the Blade Storm lines up at the same time. This happens every time. Happens right after the Dark Wings. So it's kind of, again, these things are starting to line up more and more and more. It gets harder and harder and harder as the fight goes on. So the more DPS you do, the less of these tricky mechanics that you kind of need to deal with. Just keep in mind, the more prepared you are, the easier it is to do more damage. So my Hodge still isn't up, and he's Blade Storming again. Right after this, we're going to get a shield, and he's going to enrage. This is the problem. At this point, Jarl needs to basically be dead. Otherwise, he's going to keep chain casting his abilities. And then right after this, Fuljar is going to keep chain casting their abilities. And then Sigrin keeps chain casting their abilities. So we're basically running out of time here. So we're going to need to continue to get some good DPS in. Our next set of wings is coming. And our next potion's coming. This is what I'm waiting for. I'm going to try to line these up to finally finish this boss off. And then the shield comes out, and then Jarl is going to do his enrage, and Sigrin is going to cast Blood of the Fathers. So the faster we get this ancestral knowledge down here, the better. Actually, so I didn't even wait for my pot. I actually just full sent the wings. I knew that those two abilities are going to overlap. So the faster we get through this ancestral knowledge, the easier it is to manage the two abilities that are left over. So we get really lucky here, and Jarl is about to actually die. By the time I got to this attempt, I'd only killed Jarl a handful of times. In fact, maybe not at all. To be fair, I think I got cock blocked at this spot like a billion times. So Jarl's actually enraged right now, and we mess up Sigrin's Father of the Blood because I'm panicking and I'm looking at the health and I'm super excited. So what we're going to do is he's wave blasting us right now. We ended up bubbling because Dark Wings is coming at the exact same time. We actually missed the Dark Wings, I think, but we finally killed Jarl here right as those Dark Wings go off. Now, right at the end of the bubble, in fact, the bubble's even worn off, I'm starting to cast Repentance. Actually, you can see I started it a second ago. We're going to leave Sigrin alone until Blood of the Fathers is completely gone. If we were using Blinding Light or Hodge, this would not have worked. This is a wipe condition right here. So it's actually super. This is why I really stand behind the Repentance choice, is for this exact moment here. I wouldn't have gotten the kill if I didn't have Repentance. As you can see, for my second pot, I used Unbridled Fury. We're down to a 2-target cleave. I think Unbridled Fury picks up and takes over as a DPS rotation. Even more so, we're only actually really doing single target, so we kind of need it. We're looking at the timer here, waiting for Blood of the Fathers to expire, and then we'll get back on 2-target cleave. But we're super close. 20% is when Sigrin dies and the encounter is over. And 7-8% is when Runeseer Fuljar, quote unquote, dies. So we're just going to keep DPSing, keeping an eye on this timer, and then we deal with this Dark Wings. He's going to cast his bubble again. So then afterwards, I'm going to switch to Sigrin and start DPSing here. We keep this 2-target cleave still matters, even though this is getting absorbed. The damage that we're doing to the shield is also being applied to Sigrin. So keep in mind that this is still a great time to 2-target cleave, even though we're targeting Sigrin. Cleaving here is still giving us additional damage. And that's it. We finally got that kill. This took us a long time, but ultimately this fight is really, really complicated. You can't make any mistakes, and you have to do really, really good DPS. So you have to be on top of your DPS rotation, and you can't mess up any of the mechanics. All right, fam, hopefully you enjoyed that video. If it helped you out at all, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. I have a bunch of Mage Tower guides out there, as well as Mythic Plus guides. We also made a video for the 7 easiest specs to help you guys get your spell tome mount. If you're here because you're trying to get to 36 out of 36, good luck on your endeavors. For all 5 of the God's Queen Furies challenges, this is probably the easiest one. The other 4 are going to be substantially more brutal. So make sure you go do your homework and get some better gear, some things that will make this encounter a little bit easier for you. All right, fam, have a good day and peace.